What's up, everybody? This is David with Metro Jiu-Jitsu. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Just a few things before we get started. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. You'll get notified of our latest updates and content. If you have anything that you want to hear on our podcast, go ahead and shoot us an email, metrobjj@gmail.com. Enjoy. All right, guys, welcome back to a very special episode of the Metro Jiu-Jitsu podcast. Here we have a special guest, ZAC VASICek, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, Zach?
Hey, everybody. How y'all doing? Thanks for having me, Dave. Thanks for having me, Mom.
Absolutely. He was just, Zach was just commiserating with us about the beautiful state of the roads we have back home in Michigan.
I miss my friends, I miss the beer, but every time I get on the road, I want to head back to Georgia as soon as possible. I do not miss the roads, man.
What's the average temperature down there? Like midwinter, cut January, what's the temperature?
It'll get down to like 40s and stuff, but
okay.
like there's a slight dusting of snow. City shuts down.
Okay.
Here it's whiteout conditions, and you ask your boss, "Hey, can I leave early?" Yeah, if you want to use benefit time, we're not letting you out early. What do you expect? It's Michigan. So what if you have to? So what if you're driving home in whiteout conditions? I don't care.
Right.
Here, city shuts down for a tiny possibility of snow. It's amazing.
That's nice, man.
It's so cute how bad they think weather is down there.
So let's that's a good segue into, why don't you give us just kind of a brief background of kind of who you are, how long ago you started jiu-jitsu, where you started, where you train now, and kind of up to that point. So
way back about a decade ago, which time flies, man, I tell you. I started off. I just graduated college. In late 2008, early 2009. In business, there wasn't really a lot going on because the economy took a hit. So my mom was very gracious enough to, let me pursue something I'd always wanted to do. I'd wrestled all through high school. First time I saw UFC, I was like, oh my God, this place is amazing. And I always kind of wanted to do it. So didn't really have a lot going on, and found out that there was a little place in Monroe that unfortunately now is a bail bonds place, and kind of hurts my soul seeing it. It was called the Dragon's Den, and which was funny because I never really saw the sign over it for the longest time. So for about 6 months, I never actually knew what the name of the place was, but little tiny sign called Dragon's Den, and what actually attracted me there was they had a Sambo class there. So
sweet.
Russian Jiu-Jitsu, if it's not, but just for simplicity's sake, in case you
Sambo is brutal too.
It is a lot of fun and is very brutal, but I started going there and trained there for about a year, and as we were going, what ended up kind of really accelerating my jiu-jitsu journey was we kind of got duped by a fake black belt. And
pretending to be jiu-jitsu black belt?
Yes.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yes, a fake jiu-jitsu black belt.
What year is this?
This was probably about mid 2010. About this point, so I've been training for about a year, and I was at a wrestling tournament at Southgate High School. Saw this guy wearing I think it was Marcelo Ferreira shirt, and said he was with American Top and said he was a black belt. Well, he came in, and my jiu-jitsu instructor at the time, Tino, was kind of looking at it, and he was like, I don't know. So he called up Angelo Popovsky, who was a black belt at Warrior Way, and he came down.
Isn't it funny how you can call or message people even until today and check the lineage of a person?
I have one of the. I'll get to this. I have the most crazy cycle of getting promoted, but pretty much everything I have, I will. You can document everything, and that is the one nice thing about jiu-jitsu is no matter how old it is, no matter where in some tiny town in whatever country it is, you can track the affiliation to it.
There's what you would call, quote unquote, a paper trail.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what ended up happening was it went, and Angelo came in and he rolled. So we did it Nogi. He rolled with this guy, and he basically told the guy, "You're not a black belt. Don't ever come back. Don't ever show your face here." And then when
was he, a local guy?
So Angelo was up in Warrior Way.
Yeah.
This guy lived in Dearborn, and I was kind of driving him. I would pick him up and I would drive him down, and it's one of those things where, like, you're showing a move, and keep in mind that we're all like blue belt. Tino at the time, he was a 3-stripe blue belt, but I mean, he hadn't been training like about 5 or 6 years, and he had just started to get back into it. And if somebody else was like if some guy's a purple belt, you have a bunch of white and blue belts, and keep in mind this is early 2009, isn't like where you can go on YouTube and literally get like a black belt if you just basically watch a ton of YouTube and practice everything. This is still jiu-jitsu there, but it's not anywhere near where it is today. Like, you don't have flow grappling with like 500,000 hours of everything.
Yeah.
So if you're a purple belt, you're dealing with a bunch of blue belts, or white belts, and you are just showing techniques. Yeah, you can look phenomenal on it. But when you have somebody who's legitimately a black belt come in and say, like, bro, stop playing, man.
Sure.
So he got kicked out. So that basically ended us getting an affiliation with Warrior Way. So then for about another year and a half, I would go from I'd drive up to Warrior Way, do a class at Warrior Way. Then I would come down, throw my gi in the wash, and then basically reteach what I learned in Warrior Way down in Monroe. My mom, if I can ever show her how to use this technology, listen to this, I can't thank her enough. But what was beautiful about my upbringing in that, starting off this little place in Monroe, was that my teacher had learned under Holker, Hoyler, and Hoyce. He had learned under the actual, like, the main,
fathers almost.
Literally, yeah. And what that really brought to my attention was just how thankful I am that I had the most fundamental, solid upbringing, because, like, I would see people who would, they do little things. Like, for me, I always see, like, how does somebody shrimp? Because, like, there's a bunch of different ways people teach it, but it's just like when you learn history, like, there's a you learn about George Washington, from the George Washington you learn about at first grade is different than the one at 8th grade, different than the one at high school, different than the one at college,
different than the Netflix special that they show about after.
And that's what I'm saying, is that, like, there's the truth, but sometimes people will water it down, and that was one of the problems. That was one of the things I was super grateful, was that we drilled everything, and my initial teacher Tino would allowed us to really break down, because if we would say, hey, if you turn this way, this leaves you open to a Dars. Hey, we need to modify, we need to do it. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and really focus on that. And, that kind of leads me to that. So then that was one of my big things.
Funny you say that. David just caught me in that.
Yeah. Well, no,
yesterday.
That's
It was annoying because I looked at him and I was tired. I'm like, David, you set me up.
He what he's not telling you is that was probably his 20th minute of rolling, and then we were Shark Tanking him. So at that point,
I still really felt like deceived.
Well, it's funny because, like, one of the reasons I modified is I actually saw someone get caught in this, and, like, on the video I was watching it as he was in a half guard. I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna get Darsed. Oh my god, he's gonna get Darsed, and he got Darsed. And that was one of the beautiful things, that I had this super solid foundation, and I started, and we could modify things, because that's another thing that was, some places where you say, hey, what happens if you do it like this? And they're like, verboten, you're going against the word of God. You can't change this technique. What are you talking about? We never really had that mentality where I was. And then, of course, all good things come to an end. At this point now, I'm in my mid-20s, so it's nice having, just training all the time, but, at some point in time, you actually have to get a real job. You have to graduate, you have to actually do something with your life.
Start that next phase of life, yeah.
Yeah, so I get my big boy job, and I start going down to about 2 days a week, and I start training. Basically my off days were like Tuesday and Wednesday, so I was teaching at a school in Taylor called Courageous, and I was still teaching, and it really helped me, though, because, like, I could go and really work on just fundamentals. I was just teaching real basic fundamentals, but it was fun for me because I went from training 5 days a week to now only 2, which really stunk, but I was still able to teach, which I really enjoyed. And then I moved to another. Then before I moved to Michigan, moved from Michigan, I should say. Moved up to a place and was working out Sterling Heights. Went to a place called Victorious MMA, taught by Victor Torres. I met him at Warrior Way, and he was close by, and one of the big things about Vic was he really preached fundamentals. Like, that was his big thing. And it's really funny because one of the things I really learned from him was, all the, you do back rolls, forward rolls, up and base, all these stuff that, when you're a white belt, you're like, why are we doing these weird movements?
Yeah.
Okay, Professor Mo tells me to do that. Professor Dave tells me to do that. Okay, you start to kind of realize every single movement you do, there's a real world application to it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
And it usually happens in almost every single roll. One of my big escapes, back roll. Hey, somebody's keeping pressure on you. Hey, why don't you just grab the gi, put your knuckles in his face, get up and base. Hey, you're out.
Yeah.
Hey, how do I get out of this position? You stand up and base. You do a backslide. Everything starts to kind of kick in, and that's when you start to realize that Jiu-Jitsu is a series of movements. It's like a dance. Once you figure out how to make your body use the motions, then it becomes, okay, when do these motions come into play?
Yeah.
And it makes it a lot easier to break things down. So
Yeah, we're always, sorry to interrupt, I'm always trying to find those teachable moments because we're obviously a new academy, and every chance I get, be like, oh, and whatever, bump sweep, Kimura, regarding anything, it's like, hey guys, this should look familiar. This is a technical stand-up. This is a hip escape. This is a belly down. So it's like it's getting them to see. Hopefully that light bulb comes on and they're like, oh yeah. We're not trying to make you look demon possessed. My sister said that first tournament when everyone's shrimping across the mat. She's like, they all look demon possessed. What are they doing?
I can see. Was that Claire?
That was not Claire. That was Elizabeth. She was making jokes about it, but
no, because the reason the biggest thing that I always try to do is I always try to say, one of the things I've been teaching for so long is I always want to make sure I say that faith is for church. I don't want you to ever do anything I say by faith. I'm going to show you exactly why I'm showing you the way I'm showing you. It's like, why is it that we do these warm-ups? Okay, a forward roll. Why would he ever have to do that? Okay, here's an example. Look, you're in turtle. I need to get you over. I'm going to forward roll to get you to your side, and then I can open you up. Yeah. Why do we do backward rolls? Okay, well, look, if someone's in north-south, I can base off their hips. I can do a backward roll to get my hooks in, and I can take their back. Why do we have to shrimp, without overextending our arms? Well, if we overextend our arms, then we can get caught in a DARS, which we don't want to do. I always want to make sure that everything I teach and everything I show, there's a reason for it. And, my part of the thing behind me, and it's kind of gotten me in trouble sometimes, is I always ask a lot of, why do you do it this way? And
your instructors?
Sometimes to my instructors, or anytime someone's showing me a technique, or like to anybody, I'm always like,
you're supposed to just listen, not don't question us.
Yeah, exactly. And because my thing is always, like if I show you a move, right, Mo, and you go out in a tournament and it doesn't work, and you did everything textbook perfectly, and I'm standing there like scratching my head, like trying not to make eye contact because you're giving me a look of like, you literally showed me this move, it didn't work, and I got submitted. That's a really big... Luckily, that's never happened. But, my thing is that if I ever show you something, Dave can attest, what I show works, so,
It's funny.
But, that was always a really big responsibility for me. And I always wanted to make sure, I understood why, you did everything. So that I've been really blessed on it. And so kind of getting back to the initial question, after I was with Vic, and I kind of, I remember I took to get my fourth stripe on my purple belt, he gave me the brown belt test under Cascal, which was like 10 moves from all these positions, and
10 moves from all
it was like, so you had to do like 10, so it was like 10 sweeps. It was like 10 sweeps, 10 different guard passes, and I mean, man, there were so many times I'm like flashing back to like the one seminar I went to. I'm like, oh yeah, because like you start, all these, generally in most positions, 3, you can do 5, and then you have like maybe 1 in the back that you saw online or some seminar a long time ago. But when you actually start going through and you start doing like all these passes and everything else, it's just, you kind of stop and you're like, man, just all the stuff that you learn, it was really crazy. But when he gave me that and he said, you've done it, you passed the test, but I want you to compete more. So then I moved down to Georgia.
What year was that?
This was 2016 when he gave me that test. Moved down to Georgia.
I remember you saying that. Yeah, I remember that.
When I moved down to Georgia because my work moved my job down there.
Yeah.
And so funny thing about Georgia, everybody here says I'm from Detroit. Literally in Georgia, every place says Atlanta on the actual address. So I'm about 13 miles south of Atlanta proper, but where the school was, it's Alliance Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So if you've ever driven in Atlanta, you know that getting from anywhere into the city is next to impossible at any peak hour because it's 5 lanes of bumper to bumper traffic about 6.5 hours out of the day.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's terrible. But then I find out, I'm like, oh, this place is only 5 miles from me. Great. So I end up going there, and it's it was just really awesome. Just learning from, I was on Jacare was there for about the first year I was there, and now Leo's been after Jacare retired, Leo took over. And it's just really crazy, you think jiu-jitsu, and then you go against somebody who, is at the highest level, like you've rolled with, you guys have both rolled with Cody, Garmo, Dante, and you're like, you thought you knew jiu-jitsu, and then it's like, no. And then when you go against someone like Leo, who's, 3-time world champion, 3rd place at Abu Dhabi, it's one thing when you know how to do the basics. You say, how do you grab? What do you do? How do you want to control somebody? You take your finger, put it right here, and you just cup it, right? Proper side, proper body control, right? Then you have somebody actually do it to you perfectly.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. And it was just really funny. Just, one of the things that when the first time I ever learned self-defense was it was the one where you do the headlock escape, and you have the grip around the guy's head, post, and I remember the first time I learned it, I was like, the way they're showing it, this isn't gonna work, and I was a white belt, I didn't know any better. I went and I just kind of ran the guy over because I was like, I've done this move in wrestling 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Then I went down to a Damien Maya, seminar, and he was actually showing, oh yeah. So if you do this, you want to make sure you have your hip positioned right over his hip, so this way the guy in bottom can't physically get up to do this. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, I've done that before. I've had to pay $300 for private lessons from world champions in order to say, okay, I'll take your recommendation.
It's like I'll yeah. Well, and that's sometimes because with what we're teaching, I'm like, I want them to, we want to bring the best value we can to our members. And I'm like, I almost want them to feel like they got a private seminar every time. And then it just clicked to me, your comment about the 10 whatever, passes, sweeps, submissions from, that's, everyone's got, like you're saying, a 1-2, a 1-2-3 maybe, and that develops your game.
Yeah.
And I told, and so it kind of, what I told them is like, guys, in a lot of moves, what differentiates a white belt from a black belt is the timing and the technique behind it. Like, it's like the biggest one, I saw a highlight, it was like 2 weeks ago, I forget who it was, he had like a flawless bump sweep, simple bump sweep, but in like a black belt, I think it might have been Masters Worlds or something, he exploded into it, and it was just the timing of it all. The guy sat up, he was going with the energy, and it was flawless, the way a bump sweep is supposed to be done, and it's 101 jiu-jitsu.
Well, one of the things that I was really blessed at is we drilled the living you-know-what out of just the timing of, like, whenever somebody's going to... Because whenever someone goes to mount you, there's always that split second where their weight goes off their side and on top of you, and all you have to do is just bump it over. And if you really... You just learn, like I said, it's kind of like a dance, or it's a series of movements. When you break it down, what is jiu-jitsu? It's a series of movements. When you break it down, and when you can just know that position, there's a lot of times where, like, I want you to go to mount. I kind of tell everyone, I time the greed, like, I'm waiting for you to get just a little bit too greedy, and then I get my move. And
I told you, bear traps, bro. I'm telling you.
That's the thing that that's one of the things, kind of going to your point, is you see as you go, you find out, like, little tricks. And one of the biggest blessings about working with Leo is that he'll go and he'll show a move that or at least you thought you did, really well. And then he'll just show one little tiny thing, like, oh, actually, guys, so all you do is you just grab the hip and you move backwards. You're like, you can go another direction? And it's like, your mind just gets blown. And you're like, I kind of always say, the longer I do jiu-jitsu, the dumber I feel. Because I'm like, wait, you mean all I had to do was this and that?
Remember when Alex got his black belt? Mm-hmm. He said, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. He's the black belt. And he's just scratching the surface.
Yeah, Alex Hody, he was at the top of the food chain at our school, and he's competed all over the country. I mean, he is on another level. And when he got his black belt, he's like, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. And when he said that, I said, I don't get it.
So this
why?
is
how?
So, when you're
you can murder everybody here with one arm and one leg.
Yeah. Well, when you're first starting out, it's like when you first start out, you see you see a black belt if you're lucky enough to go. I mean, now it's not as uncommon, but like when we started out, if there was ever a black belt back in the early aughts, and even like when you first started, in the 90s, if there was ever a black belt there, you're like, this is some level that you can't even fathom.
Yeah.
And now that we're all brown belts, and especially at Alliance, where, no joke, there were times where there was 13 to 15 black belts on the mat on a Saturday class.
That's dope.
It blew my mind.
That's amazing. And one of my old professors, Danny Adjemi, when we first started, it wasn't. It was like we were back then. It was Shark Tank every day.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, okay, Monday, Wednesday, we'll train or we'll do this position training. It was like a Shark Tank every day of the week, and I remember him telling me as a blue belt, he started to say it again and again and again. You guys are so much better than we were. Well, and the evolution and the changing and the transferring of knowledge and the of the training. He just said, as a blue belt, you guys are way better than we were.
Yeah. Well,
as a purple belt, you guys are way ahead of us, and it was cool to
It's really crazy because we've been we've seen it's like your grandparents where they saw they went from like Model Ts to the cars that are at now. We've seen it going from there'd be if anybody had a DVD of a jiu-jitsu person.
I got Sal's DVDs. I still got
I
got a book right here.
But that's what I'm saying. It went from being everyone kind of gather around oh my god, to where now it's you just go onto YouTube and there's 20. There's you just type in any jiu-jitsu move. There's 5,000 of.
Well, what, Zach, being in the jiu-jitsu industry for so many years, this is a whole other topic. But I honestly feel that that people 10 and 20 years ago knew and still know what a precious thing, a piece of knowledge this is, like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
Honestly, I really feel that some professors and people, they don't share. And I'm talking to their own students, and I think, I come from a training background where I train people for a living outside of jiu-jitsu, but I'm all about training people and teaching people how to learn. And I think that it's coming. I think Americans are bringing that to jiu-jitsu versus the.
Well, it's really funny you said that. So when I was first learning, when I was first learning how to teach, my initial professor, Tino, and I say professor because anybody who's teaching me is my professor, and so sensei. If he was not a black belt, but he actually showed me this Gracie seminar video where what it was is they said, okay, you want to. So the object was the guy's on one end of the room. You have to get him to the other end of the room to grab a bottle. He's blindfolded, right? So they said, it's okay, how do you have him do that? So the guy was like, okay, walk forward 10 steps, okay, go over 3 steps, bend down, a little more to the right, a little more to the right, okay, grab it. All right, and they're like, okay, yeah, no big deal. So then the Gracie said, okay, watch this. Had the guy blindfolded, grabbed him by the hand, walked him all the way over, bled him down, and had him grab the water bottle. And it's okay, there's 2 ways you can do that, because I can go and I can tell you every step by step on how to do something. But if I don't lead you by the hand and walk you through the motions, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as, you can watch a YouTube video of every single step broken down every single way. But if you don't have somebody physically showing that to you of like, okay, here's the thing. You're most of the way there, but here's where you're going to run into a problem. You got to move this just a certain way. You got to move your foot just a certain way. If you don't have that, it's not going to work. And that's kind of one of the things that, now, like you were saying, we've seen everything so many ways, so many different teachers, so many different people coming through. And one of the craziest things, kind of like, when you were saying, when we first started off, we were white belts, black belt. God, we never even thought about that. And one of the craziest things that I've never even thought about this was, until recently, was, because right now I'm a 2-stripe brown belt, and, if I ever get a guard, maybe I can get a black belt one of these days. But, brown belt.
10 years ago, your status would be probably at a 2nd stripe black belt. So it's changed.
It was funny, though, because what one of the black belts I trained with, his name is Chuck, and what he said is, the black belt is the belt you're going to wear the longest. And I'm like, me getting a black belt is still like, huh? Like, this is something that could eventually happen? Like, I can't even fathom this. And now it's like, because remember, once you get a black belt, the only time you're ever going to change that belt is if you've been a black belt for
40 years.
Something unheard of.
How many years is it?
It gets to the point, for a coral belt, it gets to, like, you're looking at 10 years in between stripes. So, like, it's got to be 70 or something. It's like 60, 70.
If anybody's listening to this, you can go ahead and Google it. You can put down the exact numbers of where we got this wrong in the comments. We're not going to hold it to it. But
yeah, like it's out of my mind.
It's going to be. There's a reason why the amount of There's a reason why every single person you've ever seen wear those belts is no spring chicken by any means. But once you get that level, and it's really crazy to me because, when you see people get there, they are all saying, they're very open to learning, and that's kind of one of the marks of, like, when you're being what makes a really good black belt is somebody who's willing to open their mind to stuff, because like you said, everybody has something to offer, and like everybody who comes from different schools, and one of the things that really I never could wrap my head around, because I came from a wrestling background, and one of the things in wrestling was, especially when it got to individual districts and individual regionals, individual states, everybody from one area, with everyone in like Monroe, Monroe County, Wayne County, like we all gather around, we all train together. Mm-hmm. That was great. And that I've had some schools are like, yeah, sure, go train here, bring something back, but look, I'm teaching you jiu-jitsu. You can go wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And some places, they were like, if you ever trained anywhere, you were ostracized. Like, you got in big trouble. I got in trouble with that one time because, I would go to open mats, and my best friend was fighting my black belt. That was awkward. But, like, I always had that mentality, though, like, if somebody, hey, Mo, you train at insert affiliation here. I really like training with you. Or David, you train at this affiliation. Yeah. I really like training with you. It was never that big of a deal, because the thing is that you always want to have that family mentality.
I agree.
Yeah. But, you never want to, if somebody ever wants to, you always want to have that, adhesiveness where, like, you can always go, and, if you're somewhere else, go train, check it out, see how you like it. But, you want it, because that's the other thing, too, is that's kind of one of the things that really helps your product is, you go here and you see, hey, the way you guys teach us is amazing. You really break everything down. I went to this other place. They showed it to us like 2 moves, and they're like, all right, guys, go roll. And we're like, what did I just learn?
And I think you have to be, I think it's healthy to train at other areas, other places outside of your own gym. But I also think it's, the cultures are so, they could suck you in so easily that not everybody's in the right place to explore, because honestly they could be manipulated or poisoned. Even if they're not trying to steal a member, they could like influence them and put some oil and really clean
Oil in
water
the
and
water.
send it back to the lake where it came from.
Yeah,
So it's not always about stealing. It's just about
there's always that give and take to it,
Yeah.
but it's like you want to be a little open to it. And more so, what I was getting at is that you want to be able to go to different places because you want to see what works. And that was the beauty about my path. So kind of getting to what my lineage is. I got my blue belt under Kaiki, then I got my purple belt under Damon Maya, and then I got my brown belt under so it was Leo and Master Jacare. They gave me my brown belt.
That's
and
sweet.
It's like my thing is forked so many different ways. I've trained at Extreme Couture, I've trained at Team Quest, I've trained about 7 different places in Michigan, I've trained in Georgia, I've trained a couple places in Georgia, and
You're lucky to say that. I mean, honestly, looking back, you're lucky because you've got to touch different places, different styles, different people at different levels in their career. So that's a lot of
it's just
a lot of
Exposure.
when
definitely.
that's kind of one of the things is that it's I never really had that that thing where when you start to get, now that I've had the pleasure to sit through a lot of black belt ceremonies now and people getting it. It's funny because a lot of people who didn't start off at Alliance headquarters, when you ask them, it's kind of all the same thing. Is that I started off in this little school way in the back, with the leaky roof, the tiny little areas, where you'd have holes in the drywall from guys getting thrown through it, like these little dang places, and you just, that's where you start to grow from there, and makes you just appreciate everything about it. And the biggest thing I will say about this whole journey that I've been on is it's really crazy how much of a family atmosphere it really gives to you, because like you see the cauliflower ear, you see somebody wearing a jiu-jitsu shirt, the second you see that, you're like, oh, you train jiu-jitsu, or hey man, you roll, and like all of a sudden you go and you will strike up like a 20-30 minute conversation. Like last week
it's like climbing the Grand Canyon, where very few people could say that, and you have that immediate connection.
Well, it was funny because a couple weeks ago, or like 2 weeks ago or something, I'm with my girlfriend at a bar in Georgia, and I see some guy walk in, and he's got a jiu-jitsu shirt, and I walk up to him like, oh hey man, you train jiu-jitsu? Oh yeah. And we just start talking for like 20 minutes, and we're carrying on this long conversation. And as soon as I sit down, my girlfriend looks at me. She's like, "So is he your new BFF?" I'm like, "No, I mean we just do jiu-jitsu. This kind of happens." I'm like, "Sorry about that." And I'm sure your wives have both had to put up with it.
They could just never understand.
They can't, man. Oh my gosh.
It's one of those things where like you meet. I was really thinking about this. When you initially asked me about it, it's like, how would you describe jiu-jitsu? And I can't really. I say community, but I can't really find the word to really describe it, because it's like, it's something like, I don't want to liken it to, a veteran, like someone who's been to war, because it's not, we do, theoretically, yes, if you apply this and you don't let go, it could lead to that, but, hopefully you will never have to, but,
Right.
it's sort of like it's sort of like a mix between, like, it's not quite, community isn't really strong enough a word. I don't really want to say religion, because it's like it in a way it kind of is, but you really see people who, like, sometimes they're a little lost in where they're trying to go. They start doing jiu-jitsu, and you see that when you start doing jiu-jitsu, it makes you reevaluate a whole lot of things in your life, because you have to make time.
I wonder why Taekwondo doesn't do that. Like, this is not a shot by any means, but what?
Well, no, because you can speak like I've never done it. You've actually practiced Taekwondo, so you're attesting to it. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
Thanks for protecting me.
Yeah, no, like I'm not that you needed it. I'm just saying, like, if I talk smack, it would be smack. But you're actually testimony.
But I've done other arts, and it's there's nothing like the journey that has put you on of self-discovery.
Well, it's
pretty amazing.
The thing is that it's when you explain to somebody, because the thing is that this is a difference between when you go and you look at how it used to be in Brazil. They don't ever really, so like you don't ever want to water it down, but you want to maybe simplify it. So like if you can find a way to go and explain something in like 10 words as opposed to 20 words, that's different than changing the message. So like earlier when we said is, here's George Washington. And if you want to, granted, you can write an entire book on George Washington, but if you want to actually explain who George Washington was, you can say he was a man who did some amazing things, some not so amazing things, some awful things, but at the end of the day, we would not be where we are if not for him. And the thing is that when you're going and doing jiu-jitsu, the technique is the same way. You want to find a way to kind of go through it. But when you tell somebody who's done martial arts as a kid, oh yeah, I remember when I did Hapkido, and I wrote down there, it's like, jiu-jitsu, Hapkido is really hard. It took me 1 year to get a black belt. Now we're looking at them like, you're trying not to laugh because you tell someone, yeah, you call him professor. Well, why? Because it takes you about, 10, 15 years to get a black belt. And, you look at the people who got it in 3 years. Well, yeah, you're training, you're literally going through 40 hours a week, training for this every single day to get your black belt. And, there's a reason why it's a big deal. Oh my God, this guy got his black belt. It's a big celebration. It's a ceremony. Because, the thing is that if you want to do jiu-jitsu, okay, so you know that you're going to have to set aside, let's say, 2 hours a day to do this. Okay, so let's say that you have a newborn or more than one newborn.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have to figure out, okay, how am I going to get to training? Now, even if you don't have a kid, you know that, okay, I'm going to train early Saturday. I know that if I show up hungover, life is going to suck to levels I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't go out drinking, or maybe only have one beer. Or I know that, okay, man, I get really tired. Maybe I'm not going to eat that second dessert or whatever. Maybe I want to start taking a little bit better care of myself so that, that young guy doesn't go and beat the crap out of me so easily. It's one decision that makes you do other decisions. And one of the big things about jiu-jitsu is it's not easy. And that's kind of one of the things, I remember, I'm not going to say where it was, but there was a time that I was brought in because at the time we were kind of planning on doing a offset of our jiu-jitsu school under this Choi Kwan Do place, and I watched them go and I thought the guy was just shadow boxing because they're throwing low, they're not doing anything by any means technical, and they're going, they do it for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, whatever, everyone does their own thing. Come to find out that was her actually doing the form, and I about just dropped my jaw. But the thing is that one of the sad parts about it is a lot of people, they want to feel like they've done the work without actually doing the work. Yeah. And one of the hard things about jiu-jitsu is you're going to find out in about 2 seconds when you get out on the mat if you've done the work or not. Because as you know, someone says, oh yeah, they're real good. You watch them shrimp up and down the mat. You watch them do an arm bar. You watch them do a move on you. You can tell real quick if this person knows what they're doing or not.
There's no faking it. Let me go ahead and end this segment right here, guys, because we do have some focus questions. Zach, thank you. It's just every time we get together, especially with another upper rank, it's I could talk about this 40 hours a week, nonstop, literally 40 hours a week. But we'll start some questions on this next episode. Thank you so much for that intro, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
And, thanks for having me, guys.
Talk to you guys very soon. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. As always, if you have any questions or anything you want to hear on our podcast, you can send those to metrobjj@gmail.com. Or perhaps you want to start your jiu-jitsu journey today, come check out our gym. We're located at 13555 Eureka Rd, Southgate, Michigan. And we're right next to Planet Fitness. Come on in. Our friendly staff will be happy to answer any of your questions and meet your goals. Talk to you soon.